Thunder rolls across the Montana plains as Jack Harrison's weathered hands grip his horse's reins. Through the driving rain, he spots a stranded wagon and a woman struggling with 3 small children. 5 years after losing his wife to an outlaw's bullet, he's learned to ride past strangers, but something about those children's frightened faces stirs memories of a happier time. Against his better judgment, he guides his horse toward them, unaware that this single act of kindness will unravel a web of secrets that stretches back to the darkest day of his life. What terrible choice will Jack face when he discovers the true identity of the woman he's beginning to love? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The wooden music box sat on Jack Harrison's mantelpiece, gathering dust these past 5 years. Some nights, like tonight, with rain drumming against the cabin's tin roof, he'd find himself standing before it, fingers hovering over its intricate carvings. Mary had loved this box, a wedding gift from her grandmother. She'd wind it up every evening, letting the tinkling melody of Beautiful Dreamer fill their home while she prepared supper. Jack's calloused hand trembled as he lifted the lid. The familiar tune spilled out, as clear as the day he'd first heard it, though something in the mechanism had developed a slight catch that made one note linger longer than it should. Much like his own heart, he supposed, still beating, but with a noticeable hitch. "Careful with them young'uns," Mary had always said whenever local families visited. "They're precious as spring colts." She dreamed of filling their home with children's laughter, but fate had other plans. Now, watching through his window as the woman from the wagon settled 3 sleeping children onto his spare bed, Jack felt an old ache surface. The stranger had introduced herself as Sarah Mitchell, a widow heading west to stay with relatives. Her story seemed straightforward enough, but 20 years of ranching had taught Jack that the straightest fence line often hid the deepest sink holes. There was something in her eyes when she thought no one was looking, a wariness that spoke of more than just the ordinary caution of a woman traveling alone with children. Thunder cracked overhead, and Jack closed the music box with a gentle click. The last time he'd taken in strays, it had been a pair of ranch hands who turned out to be running from the law. He'd learned his lesson then, or thought he had, but those children. He moved to his leather armchair, the one Mary had insisted they buy in their first year of marriage. "A man needs a proper throne in his castle," she'd declared, eyes twinkling. Jack had protested the expense, but she'd been right, as she usually was. The chair had molded itself to him over the years, becoming a silent companion during countless solitary evenings. The rain intensified, and Jack's mind wandered back to that other stormy night, 5 years ago. He'd been in town, haggling over cattle prices, while Mary stayed home to prepare for their anniversary dinner. He should have been there. Should have noticed the strange tracks leading to their property. Should have. His hands clenched on the armrests. The sheriff had tried to piece it together afterward, how the outlaw had sought shelter from the storm, how Mary had likely offered him food and coffee, as was her way. They found the coffee cups still on the table, one with a lipstick mark, the other half full and cold. The killer had taken nothing but their best horse and Mary's life, leaving Jack with nothing but a music box full of memories and a heart full of guilt. A small sound drew his attention. One of the triplets had wandered into the main room, thumb in mouth, clutching a threadbare rag doll. The girl, Annie, Sarah had called her, stood in her nightgown, looking at him with solemn eyes that seemed far too knowing for her young age. "Can't sleep, little lady?" Jack kept his voice soft, the way he did with nervous foals. She shook her head, dark curls bouncing. "The thunder's scary." Jack understood fear. He lived with it every day, though he'd gotten better at hiding it. "Would you like to hear some music?" The words surprised him, as much as they seemed to surprise her. When she nodded, he reached for the music box, wound it carefully, and opened the lid. As the gentle melody filled the room, Annie's eyes widened with wonder. She padded closer, bare feet silent on the wooden floor, until she stood right beside his chair. Without warning, she climbed into his lap, ragdoll and all, settling against him as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Jack sat frozen, the weight of her small body both foreign and achingly familiar, like the echo of a dream he'd long ago surrendered. As the music box played its last notes, he realized his shirt was damp where Annie's face pressed against it, not with tears, but with the simple trust of childhood sleep. Morning light filtered through the cabin windows, finding Annie still, curled in the armchair where Jack had settled her after she fell asleep. Her rag doll, a well-loved thing with mismatched button eyes and yarn hair, dangled from one small hand. The doll's dress, Jack noticed, had been mended multiple times with different colored threads, each careful stitch telling its own story. Of love and making do. That's hope. Sarah's soft voice came from behind him. She made it herself, with help from her sisters. Jack turned to find Sarah standing in the doorway, the other two triplets peering around her skirts. In the clear light of dawn, he could see the differences between the three girls more clearly. Annie, the dreamer, with her dark curls. Beth, the practical one, already dressed and trying to smooth her sister Emma's wild, honey-colored hair. They're not identical, Jack observed, keeping his voice low to let Annie sleep. Sarah's lips curved in a tired smile. No, but they're inseparable. Beth mothers the other two, Emma leads them into mischief, and Annie, she glanced at the sleeping child, Annie heals hearts without even trying. As if hearing her name, Annie stirred, clutching Hope closer. The doll's worn face pressed against her cheek, and Jack noticed a small paper tag sewn into its dress. The writing had faded, but he could make out 3 carefully printed letters, H-O-P. She couldn't fit the E on the tag, Beth explained matter-of-factly, moving into the room. But Emma said it doesn't matter, 'cause Hope doesn't need spelling to work. Emma nodded solemnly, then spoiled the effect by breaking into a gap-toothed grin. Can we see the horses? Mama said you have horses. I love horses. Beth's scared of them, but she won't admit it. Am not, Beth protested, though she edged closer to Sarah. Jack found himself smiling, despite his usual morning solitude being so thoroughly disrupted. Horses need to be respected, not feared. Maybe we could start with feeding them. He looked to Sarah for permission. She hesitated only a moment before nodding. After breakfast, and you'll need proper boots. Those city shoes won't do out. Here. Jack disappeared into his bedroom and returned with a small pair of boots, the leather cracked but still sturdy. Mary kept these. They were meant for... He cleared his throat. They might fit Beth. The practical triplet approached the boots cautiously, as if they might bite. Her small fingers traced the tooled leather flowers on the sides. They're pretty, she whispered. There's more in a trunk upstairs, Jack heard himself saying. Mary used to buy things, you see, for some day. He hadn't opened that trunk in 5 years, but watching Beth handle the boots with such reverence made something shift inside him. Annie woke then, yawning widely. Hope, the doll, slipped from her grasp, and Jack caught it before it hit the floor. As he handed it back, their eyes met. His weathered by years of grief, hers bright with morning trust. You fixed Hope, she said simply. Sarah made a small sound, something between a laugh and a sob. When Jack glanced her way, she was watching, him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Let's get you girls some breakfast, she said quickly. We don't want to wear out our welcome. Plenty of time, Jack found himself saying. Storms left the ground too wet for traveling. Roads won't be safe for a few days yet. He told himself it was just practical concern, nothing to do with the way Annie's face lit up or how Beth was still cradling those old boots. Emma had already discovered his hat hanging by the door and was trying it on, the brim falling well past her eyes. Can we stay forever? She asked from under its shadow. The question hung in the air like morning mist. Jack saw Sarah stiffen, saw something like fear flash across her face before she smoothed it away. Emma, we've talked about this. We don't impose on people's kindness. But watching the three little girls, Annie with her healing heart, Beth with her careful hands, and Emma with her fearless questions, Jack wondered if it was already too late to worry about imposition. They had slipped past his defenses, as easily as morning light through window panes, bringing warmth to corners long left cold. Hope the doll watched it all with her mismatched button eyes, bearing witness to the subtle shift in the cabin's atmosphere, how it felt, for the first time in 5 years, like the beginning of something rather than the echo of an ending. Sarah waited until the girls were occupied with the horses, Jack's patient voice drifting through the morning air as he taught them about curry combs and proper grooming. Only then did she slip back into the cabin, hands trembling as she retrieved the folded paper from her skirt pocket. The wanted poster had fallen from her bundle while she was settling the girls last night, and she'd barely managed to snatch it up before Jack saw it. Her brother's face stared back at her from the crude sketch, Thomas looking younger than his 30 years, but with that same hard glint in his eyes that had always worried her. Wanted, Thomas Wheeler, murder, theft, armed robbery. The reward was substantial, $1,000 dead or alive. The cast-iron stove beckoned. Sarah crouched before it, feeding the poster to the flames. As the paper curled and blackened, she whispered a prayer, not for Thomas's soul this time, but for forgiveness, for her own deception. "Mama, come see, I'm brushing a real horse." Emma's excited call drew her back outside. The scene before her squeezed Sarah's heart. Jack stood beside his gentlest mare, one hand steadying Emma as she worked the brush in careful strokes. Beth had overcome her fear enough to feed carrots to a spotted gelding, while Annie sat perched on a fence rail, singing softly to a curious colt. "You've got a natural there," Jack said, nodding toward Emma. His smile transformed his entire face, erasing years of grief. "She's got the touch." Sarah forced herself to smile back, though guilt churned in her stomach. "She's fearless, that one. Sometimes too much so, like her mama." The question was gentle, with no hint of suspicion, but Sarah's pulse quickened. "I'm not," she began, then caught herself. I try to be brave for them." Jack's eyes held hers for a moment too long. "There's different kinds of courage. Taking 3 little ones across country alone, that's no small thing." If only he knew. Sarah looked away, focusing on Beth, who had graduated to tentatively stroking the gelding's nose. "Sometimes running takes more courage than staying." Running from what? The question hung between them, heavy as storm clouds. Sarah felt the weight of her secrets pressing down, threatening to crack her carefully constructed story. But before she could respond, Annie's voice rang out clear and sweet from her perch. "Oh, give me a home, where the buffalo roam." Jack's attention shifted, his face softening as he listened. "Mary used to sing that," he said quietly. "Where did you learn it, little lady?" "Mama sings it at bedtime," Annie replied, "but she knows more verses than me." Sarah felt Jack's questioning gaze return to her. She shrugged, trying to appear casual. "It's a common enough song." "Not those extra verses. Mary learned them from her father. He wrote them himself." The world seemed to tilt beneath Sarah's feet. She grabbed the fence rail to steady herself, wood rough beneath her fingers. I must have heard it somewhere in my travels." A shout from Emma saved her from further explanation. The girl had dropped her brush and was pointing at the horizon. "Riders coming!" Jack squinted into the distance. "Just the Jenkins boys from the next ranch over. They help out sometimes." But Sarah saw him instinctively step between the approaching riders and the children. "Girls!" Sarah called, her voice steadier than she felt. "Time to wash up for lunch." "Oh, Mama. Now please." Something in her tone must have warned them. All 3 girls climbed down and hurried inside, though Emma cast longing looks over her shoulder at the horses. "They'll be here again tomorrow," Jack assured them, then turned to Sarah. "Unless you're planning to leave once the road's dry." Sarah met his gaze, saw the careful way he held himself, like a man trying not to spook a wild thing. "That would be best," she said softly, though each word felt like a betrayal. To him, to the girls, to her own heart that had begun to hope for something impossible. Jack nodded once, his face unreadable, but as he turned to greet the approaching riders, Sarah caught a glimpse of something in his expression, a shadow of loss, as if he were already mourning what had barely begun. Inside the cabin, the ashes of the wanted poster still glowed in the stove, holding the truth of who she was and why she could never stay, no matter how much she might wish otherwise. Dawn found Jack in his usual spot on the porch, but nothing else about the morning felt usual. The sounds drifting through the cabin's open windows were foreign to his solitary life. The clatter of breakfast dishes, children's whispered giggles, Sarah's gentle reminders about indoor voices. He sipped his coffee, watching the sun paint the Montana sky in shades of promise. The screen door creaked, and Beth stepped out, carrying something large and leather-bound. Jack recognized his family Bible, usually kept on the highest shelf in the sitting room. The practical triplet handled it with reverence. "I hope it's okay," she said, settling beside him on the porch step. "Emma was trying to reach it, and I thought it was better if I got it down instead." Jack nodded, understanding the logic. Good thinking. Beth carefully opened the Bible, revealing pressed flowers between its pages. "These are pretty, but old." "Mary's doing," Jack explained, touching one dried violet with gentle fingers. "She pressed a flower for every special day we had together." The petals were fragile with age, but the memories they held remained vivid. Picnics by the creek, summer dances in town, quiet evenings watching the sunset. Beth turned to the family record pages, where births, deaths, and marriages were recorded in different hands across generations. "That's beautiful writing," she said, pointing to Mary's name, written in her characteristic flowing script. "I taught at the schoolhouse before we married," Jack said. "Always said good penmanship was next to godliness." The memory brought a smile, bittersweet but genuine. A commotion from inside drew their attention. Emma's voice rose in protest about something, followed by Sarah's patient response. Beth sighed with all the weight of her 7 years. "Emma's probably trying to wear her riding clothes to breakfast again," Jack chuckled. "Reminds me of someone else who used to put practicality before propriety." He gestured to Mary's name in the Bible. "She once showed up to Sunday service in riding boots because there was a sick horse that needed tending right after." Beth's eyes widened. "Did she get in trouble?" "The minister tried to scold her, but she just said God probably cared more about helping his creatures than about fancy shoes." Jack realized he was smiling again, the memory warming him instead of wounding. Sarah appeared in the doorway, Emma now properly dressed but pouting. "There you are, Beth. Is that—" She trailed off, seeing the Bible. "It's okay, Mama. I'm being careful." Beth turned another page, revealing more pressed flowers and carefully inscribed dates. "Look, they kept memories like we do in your journal." Sarah's face went still. "Beth, honey, that's private. Put it back." But Jack was already reaching for the Bible, gently turning to the last written page. There, in Mary's hand, was the final entry. "Lord, thank you for 5 blessed years of marriage. Here's to 50 more. All my love, M." The date was 3 days before her death. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered. "We shouldn't have—" "No," Jack said, surprising himself. "It's good to remember. Mary would have liked knowing her Bible was being appreciated, especially by little ones." Annie wandered out then, Hope the doll tucked under one arm. She climbed into Jack's lap without hesitation, a habit she'd developed over the past few days. "Can we add flowers too?" Emma found some pretty yellow ones by the fence. Jack felt Sarah tense, ready to refuse. But he spoke first. "I think there's a room for new memories." He met Sarah's eyes over Annie's head. "If their mama agrees." Something shifted in Sarah's expression. Fear, longing, and something deeper that made Jack's heart beat faster. But before she could respond, hoofbeats sounded in the distance. Sarah's face drained of color. "Girls, inside," she said sharply. "Now!" Beth carefully closed the Bible, but not before Jack caught sight of something that had fallen from between its pages. A small newsprint clipping. As the girls hurried inside, he picked it up, his blood running cold as he read the headline. Wheeler Gang strikes again. Local woman murdered. When he looked up, Sarah stood frozen in the doorway, her face a mirror of his own shock. And in that moment, Jack realized that some memories weren't pressed between Bible pages. They were riding hard toward his ranch, bringing violence in their wake. The newspaper clipping trembled in Jack's hand. Sarah's face had gone the color of winter ash, her fingers clutching something at her throat, a small silver locket he hadn't noticed before. The approaching riders were still distant enough that he had time for answers, time for truth. Sarah. His voice came out rougher than intended. Tell me you didn't know. She backed away, stumbling slightly. The locket's chain broke under her grip, and the silver oval fell, hitting the wooden porch with a sound like a gunshot. It sprang open, revealing two photographs, a young Sarah smiling, and beside her, a face Jack had seen in his nightmares for 5 years. Thomas Wheeler is my brother. The words seemed to physically pain her. But Jack, please, the girls. Did you know? Each word fell like a hammer blow. When you came here, did you know who I was? Inside the cabin, Emma's laugh rang out, oblivious to the storm brewing on the porch. Sarah flinched at the sound, tears spilling down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. I knew. Jack closed his eyes, fighting the roar of betrayal in his ears. When he opened them, Sarah had moved between him and the door, arms spread as if to shield the children within. The gesture hit him like a physical blow. She thought he might hurt them, hurt children. Jack, whatever you think of me, they're innocent. They don't even know about Thomas. I've protected them from that their whole lives. The riders were closer now. Jack could make out 3 men moving fast. Sarah glanced over her shoulder, real fear replacing the tears in her eyes. Thomas sent them, she said quietly. He wants the girls. Says they're his blood, his leverage. I've been running for 2 months, staying ahead of them, but she swallowed hard. I thought if I could get to you first, explain. You were known for being a good man before Thomas destroyed your life. You hoped what? The words tasted like ashes. That I'd protect the nieces of my wife's murderer? I hoped you'd protect innocent children. The fierceness in her voice made him step back. I hoped the man Mary loved enough to write about in every letter she sent me would understand that children shouldn't pay for their uncle's sins. Jack froze. Mary wrote to you. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, but it was too late. Understanding crashed over Jack like a wave. That's how you knew the extra verses to the song, the stories about Mary. You were her friend, her best friend since school days in Ohio. Sarah's voice cracked. We wrote every week. She never told you because Thomas was already turning bad then. I was ashamed of him, trying to hide what he was becoming. Then the letters stopped, and when I found out why, she choked on a sob. I tried to warn her that last month. Tried to tell her Thomas was heading west. My letter must have arrived. Too late. The riders were at the edge of his property now. Jack could see their guns glinting in the morning sun. Inside, Annie had started singing again, the sweet sound of Home on the Range drifting through the windows. Sarah picked up the fallen locket, holding it out to him with shaking hands. I'll understand if you turn us away, but please, Jack, help us get to the next town, for Mary's sake, if not for mine. Jack looked down at the locket. Behind Thomas's photograph, he could just make out faded writing. He took it, tilting it to catch the light. The inscription read, To my dearest friend Sarah, who shares my love of adventure and poetry. Until we meet again, Mary. The hoofbeats were thunder now, and Jack had to make a choice. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her. Past the fear and guilt, he saw what Mary must have seen. Courage, fierce love, desperate hope. He saw the woman who had spent 2 months keeping 3 children safe on the run, who had risked everything on the chance that her friend's husband might have mercy. He saw the loaded rifle by his door, and for one moment he saw Mary's face the morning of their wedding, full of trust in the man she believed him to be. The riders were almost upon them when Jack made his decision. Get the girls, he said, quietly. Take them to the root cellar. There's a trap door behind the potato barrels. Don't come out until I call." Sarah stared at him, hope warring with disbelief. "Jack, go. Now." He pressed the locket back into her hands. "We'll talk about Mary's letters later." As Sarah disappeared inside, Jack stepped off the porch, rifle in hand. The man he'd been 5 years ago might have chosen revenge, but he wasn't that man anymore. 3 little girls had made sure of that. The confrontation with Thomas's men had ended without bloodshed. Barely. Jack's reputation and steady rifle hand had convinced them to ride away, but their parting words hung heavy in the afternoon air. Wheeler's coming himself. Soon. Now Jack stood in Sheriff Morgan's office in town, reading the telegram that had arrived that morning. The paper trembled slightly in his weathered hands. "Urgent stop Wheeler gang spotted crossing into Montana territory. Stop 5. Armed men heading north from Wyoming. Stop Wheeler, making threats about family business. Stop. Extreme caution advised. Stop known. Killed 3 men last month. Stop. Got this from the boys in Cheyenne," Sheriff Morgan said, his voice grave. "Thought you should know, Jack, given your history with Wheeler." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "There's talk about a woman and some kids seen around your place." Jack kept his face neutral. "Just passing through. Wagon needed repairs." "Uh-huh." The sheriff's eyes were keen. Funny timing, that. He pulled out a wanted poster, newer than the one Sarah had burned. Wheeler's sister disappeared with his kids 2 months back. 3 little girls, about 6 or 7. He'd let that hang in the air. "Any of this sounding familiar?" Jack set the telegram down with deliberate care. "Sarah's a widow heading west. Nothing more to it." "You sure about that?" Morgan leaned forward. "Because I knew Mary too, Jack. And that woman at your ranch? She's the spitting image of someone. In an old photograph Mary used to keep on her desk at the schoolhouse. Her best friend from back east," she said. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unasked questions. Finally, Jack spoke. "What exactly are you telling me, Jim?" The sheriff sighed, pushing back his hat. "I'm telling you that Wheeler's coming, and he's not planning to knock politely. I'm telling you that harboring his sister and those kids could get you killed." He paused. "I'm also telling you that if a man wanted to protect his family from a known murderer, he'd have folks on his side. Unofficially, of course." Jack thought of the girls, safely hidden back at the ranch with Sarah, thought of Annie's trust, Beth's quiet strength, Emma's wild spirit, thought of Sarah's face when she spoke of Mary, full of love and regret. "Appreciate the warning," he said finally. "But there's nothing at my place Wheeler would want." Morgan nodded slowly. "Course not." He folded the telegram, handed it to Jack. "Keep it. Might want to remember the route they're taking. And Jack." He stood, extending his hand. "Mary would be proud of you, whatever you're doing." The ride home seemed longer than usual, Jack's mind churning with plans and possibilities. The telegram felt like it was burning a hole in his vest pocket, right next to Mary's locket that Sarah had insisted he keep. He found Sarah on the porch, mending one of Emma's eternally torn dresses. The girls were napping inside, worn out from the morning's excitement. When she saw his face, she set aside her sewing. "How bad?" "Thomas is coming himself. 5 men with him." He handed her the telegram, watched her read it, saw the color drain from her face. "We'll leave tonight," she said immediately. "I won't bring this danger to your door." "No!" The word came out sharper than he intended, surprising them both. "Running's not the answer. Not anymore. Jack, I can't let you risk—" "Mary trusted you," he cut in, "above everyone except maybe me. Those letters you wrote her, did you keep them? Her replies?" Sarah nodded slowly. "In my trunk. I couldn't bear to leave them behind when we fled. Show me, please." She disappeared inside, returning with a bundle tied with faded blue ribbon. Together, they sat on the porch swing, Mary's favorite spot, and began to read. Through Mary's elegant script, a story emerged. 2 girls growing up together, sharing dreams, supporting each other through hardship. Sarah's worry about her brother's growing darkness, Mary's joy at finding love with Jack, their shared hopes for the future. The last letter was dated just days before Mary's death. In it she wrote, "Sarah, my dearest friend, I have such news, but it must wait for the next letter. Some things are too precious to trust to paper. Know that I love you like a sister, and I thank God every day for giving me two such wonderful gifts, Jack's love and your friendship." The news, Sarah said softly. She was finally pregnant. After years of trying, she was waiting to tell you in person when she couldn't finish. Jack closed his eyes, grief and understanding washing over him in equal measure. When he opened them, Sarah was watching him with tears in her eyes. "I couldn't save her," she whispered, "but I can save her nieces, even if it means facing Thomas. Even if it means we'll save them together," Jack said firmly. "For Mary." The screen door creaked, and 3 tousled heads peeked out. "Mama," Annie asked sleepily, "can we have story time?" Sarah looked at Jack, a question in her eyes. He nodded, making room on the swing. As the girls piled around them, Hope the doll clutched in Annie's arms, Jack realized that sometimes family wasn't about blood at all. Sometimes it was about choices, about love, about redemption. And sometimes it was about fighting for what Mary would have fought for. The town's social wasn't Jack's idea. But when Beth discovered the hand-drawn invitation while helping him clean out the tack room, her eyes lit up with such hope that he couldn't refuse. The paper was dusty, months old, announcing the summer dance that evening at the church hall. "Please," Beth asked, practical nature warring with unexpected yearning. "Emma's never been to a real dance, and Annie loves music so much," which was how Jack found himself standing in his best shirt, freshly ironed by Sarah, watching 3 little girls in carefully mended dresses twirl across the wooden floor. Mary's trunk had yielded hair ribbons in varying shades of blue, and Sarah had spent the afternoon weaving them into the girls' hair while Jack pretended not to notice her trembling fingers. "It's dangerous," she'd protested earlier, spreading out her own hand-drawn map of Thomas's likely approach routes. "The church hall's too exposed. Jim Morgan's got men watching every trail," Jack had assured her. "One evening of normal life won't hurt them. Or you." Now, watching Sarah hover at the edge of the crowd, Jack understood what Mary had meant in one of her letters about her friend's steel core wrapped in silk. Sarah's eyes never stopped scanning the room, even as she smiled and nodded at the ladies who came to welcome her. The music changed to something slower, and Jack found himself moving toward her before he could think better of it. "May I?" Sarah's startled look shifted to understanding as she took his offered hand. "You don't have to. I want to." The words surprised them both, with their quiet certainty. They moved together carefully at first, like wild creatures learning to trust. Jack couldn't remember the last time he'd held a woman this close. Sarah's hair smelled of lavender and sunshine, and beneath his palm, her back was straight, with hard-won strength. "Mary taught me to dance," he said softly. "Right. Here in this hall, I kept stepping on her feet, but she never lost patience." Sarah's laugh was warm against his shoulder. "She wrote me about that, said you were hopeless but handsome enough to make up for it." "That sounds like Mary." The ache in his chest was different now, bittersweet rather than bitter. "She'd be happy seeing them dance." He nodded toward the girls, who had convinced the sheriff's deputy to join their circle. "Jack," Sarah's voice hitched, "there's something you should know about Thomas's route." Her hand slipped into her pocket, withdrawing a folded paper. "I found this in Emma's doll this morning. She must have been keeping it for him." Jack led them to a quiet corner, taking the crude map. X's marked locations across Montana territory, forming a clear path to his ranch. Dates were scrawled in the margins. Thomas had been planning this for months. "Emma doesn't understand what it means," Sarah whispered. "He visited us sometimes, brought her treats, called it their special secret." Her voice broke. "I should have seen it sooner. Should have run sooner." "No more running." Jack tucked the map away, drawing her back into the dance. Over her head, he caught Sheriff Morgan's eye, received a subtle nod. The lawman had positioned men at every window, watching the darkness beyond the lantern light. The music swelled, and Sarah slowly relaxed in his arms. Across the room, Annie had fallen asleep, in old Mrs. Peterson's lap, while Beth taught Emma the proper way to curtsy. For a moment, they were just a family at a dance, normal and whole. "I never thanked you," Sarah murmured, "for believing me about Mary. About everything. Mary was the best judge of character I knew." Jack's hand tightened on hers. "If she trusted you with her deepest secrets, how could I do less?" Sarah looked up at him then, moonlight from the window turning her eyes to silver. "What if?" She swallowed hard. "What if there's one more secret? Something not even Mary knew." But before she could continue, Beth appeared at their side, face flushed with excitement. "Mama, come see! Mrs. Peterson says we can help with the cake." The moment broke like spun sugar. Sarah let Beth pull her away, but her eyes held Jack's with desperate intensity. Whatever she'd been about to say would have to wait. Jack watched them go, his arms feeling strangely empty. Through the window he caught a flash of movement in the darkness. One of Morgan's men signaling. He touched the map in his pocket, knowing that somewhere out there Thomas Wheeler was closing in. But here in the lantern light, 3 little girls were laughing over cake crumbs, and a woman who smelled of lavender had danced with him like she wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever tomorrow brought, Jack would remember this moment, when healing felt possible and love felt like dawn breaking over mountain peaks. The ride home from the social should have taken 30 minutes, but Jack led them on a winding path through moonlit pastures, testing the shadows. Sarah held Annie sleeping against her shoulder, while Beth and Emma dozed in the wagon bed behind them. The newspaper clipping Jack had found in the Bible lay between them on the seat, its edges worn from repeated folding. "Tell me about that day," Jack said quietly, eyes scanning the tree line. "The day you read about Mary." Sarah's arms tightened around Annie. "I was in Ohio still. Thomas had changed by then. Started running with a rough crowd, but I never thought—" She drew a shaky breath. "The paper came with the morning mail. Local woman murdered by Wheeler gang. I didn't believe it until I saw his quote." His quote? They interviewed him in a saloon before anyone knew he'd done it. He said she reminded him of me, her kindness. A tear fell onto Annie's hair. "That's when I knew he'd recognized her, from the photograph I'd sent him. My best friend in my letters. He killed her because of me." Jack's hands were white on the reins, but his voice stayed, gentle. "No, he killed her because of who he chose to become. You didn't choose that for him." A twig snapped in the darkness. Jack pulled the wagon to a halt, pressing a finger to his lips. In the silence they heard it, horses moving parallel to them in the trees. "Get down," Jack whispered. "There's a shallow cave behind Miller's Creek. Take the girls." Well. The voice from the shadows was almost friendly, quite the family picture. Thomas Wheeler rode into the moonlight, 5 men fanning out behind him. He looked younger than his wanted posters, handsome in a sharp way that reminded Jack of a coyote. Sarah's brother, Mary's murderer, the girl's uncle, all those truths in one man. "Hello, sister." Thomas smiled, but his eyes were cold. "Aren't you going to introduce me to my nieces?" Sarah stood slowly in the wagon, Annie still cradled against her. "They're sleeping, Thomas. Let them sleep, always protecting them." Thomas shook his head. "Like you tried to protect Mary. How'd that work out?" Jack's rifle was under the seat, but Thomas's men had them surrounded. One wrong move would start a bloodbath. He needed time, needed to get the girls clear. "You know what's funny?" Thomas continued, drawing closer. "When I killed her, I didn't even know she was pregnant. Found out later from the undertaker's report in that same newspaper." He nodded at the clipping on the wagon seat. "Would have been a cousin for my girls. Shame." The world went red at the edges of Jack's vision. Sarah's sharp intake of breath told him she hadn't known that detail either. But before either of them could speak, a small voice piped up from the wagon bed. "Uncle Thomas." Emma sat up, rubbing her eyes. "You came to visit." Thomas's smile widened. There's my favorite girl. Still got that map I gave you? Thomas. Sarah's voice held a warning. Don't what, sister? Don't claim what's mine. His voice hardened. Those are Wheeler children. My blood. And I've got plans for them. They're children, Jack cut in, not tools for your schemes. Thomas's eyes snapped to him, recognition flooding his face. Harrison, been a while? How's married life? Oh, wait, he laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Beth was awake now too, pressing close to Sarah's skirts. Only Annie slept on, innocent to the nightmare unfolding. Emma started to climb out of the wagon, but Jack caught her, pulling her back. Emma, honey, Sarah said carefully. Uncle Thomas isn't here to visit. He's here to hurt us. No! Emma struggled in Jack's grip. He brings me presents. He tells me stories. Stories about what, sweetheart? Sarah's voice cracked. About following us? About telling him where we're going? Emma went still. He said it was a game, like hide and seek. Oh, it's been quite a game. Thomas drew his revolver, the motion casual as swatting a fly. But game's over now. Girls, come to Uncle Thomas. We've got work to do. No. The word came from Beth, surprising everyone. She stood straight, Mary's blue ribbon bright in her dark hair. We're not going with you. You're the bad man from Mama's nightmares. Thomas's face twisted. Sarah, control. Your brat. Our mama, Beth continued, her voice stronger, says real family protects you. They don't make you spy or keep secrets that feel wrong. She took Emma's hand. You're not real family. Enough! Thomas raised his gun. Harrison, move away from my property. Jack felt the change in the air, the moment when choices crystallized into destiny. He saw Sarah's hand move to her pocket, where he knew she kept a small derringer. Saw Beth pull Emma close, sheltering her sister's eyes. Saw Annie finally stir, looking up at her mother with complete trust. And in that moment, Jack knew exactly what Mary would have done, what she'd want him to do. You're right about one thing, Wheeler, he said softly. This is about family. The first shot split the night like thunder. The first shot came from the trees, Sheriff Morgan's men moving into position. Thomas's horse reared, forcing him to grab his saddle horn, the gun wavering. In that instant, Sarah's derringer appeared, aimed steady at her brother's heart. Sarah? Thomas's laugh held no humor now. You won't shoot your own blood. You stopped being my blood the day you killed my best friend. Her voice shook, but her hand didn't. The day you murdered my child's aunt. The words hung in the night, air like smoke. Jack felt them settle into his understanding, rearranging everything he thought he knew. He looked at Beth, practical, steady Beth with Mary's ribbon in her hair, and saw what he should have seen from the start. Sarah reached into her pocket with her free hand, withdrew a small leather journal. Mary's last letter said she had news too precious for paper. She'd figured it out, hadn't she? Recognized Beth's eyes, Wheeler eyes. That's why you killed her. Thomas's face twisted. Always the clever one, sister. Yes, your precious Mary guessed. Found out about your little indiscretion, the married man, the hidden pregnancy, the convenient triplets when there was only one birth. His cold eyes fixed on Beth. She was going to tell everyone about my niece, ruin all our reputations. I couldn't allow that. Beth is 7, Jack said slowly, pieces falling into place. Mary died 5 years ago. She would have just learned. His voice trailed off as he remembered Mary's excitement that last month, her mysterious trips to town, the way she'd been planning something special. She was going to help Sarah adopt all 3 girls legally, Thomas sneered. Set them up with a new life, far from me, my own blood, stolen by do-gooders. More horses approached, the sheriff's posse closing in. Thomas's men shifted uneasily, but their guns stayed trained on the wagon. Mama, Beth's voice was small. What's he saying? Sarah's journal slipped from her fingers, falling open to a page filled with her desperate handwriting. Jack caught glimpses of the truth she'd carried, her shameful affair with a married man, the pregnancy she'd hidden, the twins she'd adopted to protect her daughter's identity. Every choice made to keep Beth safe from the Wheeler name, from Thomas's growing darkness. "I wanted to tell you," Sarah whispered, and Jack wasn't sure if she was speaking to Beth or to him. "At the dance, I tried. Put the gun down, sister." Thomas's voice turned, wheedling. "We're still family. I've protected our secret all these years, haven't I? Even killed to keep it quiet." "No!" The shout came from Emma, who broke free from Jack's grasp. She ran to Beth, throwing her arms around her sister. "Beth is our sister, for real and true." Annie stirred at last, lifting her head from Sarah's shoulder. "Forever and ever," she added solemnly. Thomas's gun swung toward the girls. "Blood is blood. Beth comes with me, or—" The crack of Sarah's derringer split the night. Thomas jerked back, red blooming on his shoulder, his gun hand spasmed, the revolver falling to the dirt. As if this were a signal, chaos erupted. Sheriff Morgan's men burst from the trees, rifles raised. Thomas's gang scattered, but not before one of them got off a wild shot. Sarah cried out, stumbling. Jack lunged for her as she fell, catching her and Annie together. "Mama!" Beth's scream held 7 years of love, no matter whose blood ran in her veins. Thomas, clutching his shoulder, wheeled his horse around. "This isn't over," he shouted, but his voice was lost in the thunder of hooves as Morgan's men gave chase. Jack helped Sarah sit up, his heart stopping at the sight of blood on her dress. But she was already shaking her head. "Just grazed. The girls are safe," he assured her, watching Beth and Emma help Annie down from the wagon. The 3 girls huddled together, inseparable as always. All of them. Sarah's journal lay in the dirt between them, its pages open to her deepest secrets. Jack picked it up, closed it gently, and handed it back to her. "Mary knew, didn't she?" he asked softly. "Not just about Beth. She knew everything." Sarah nodded, tears falling. She said love makes real families, not blood. She was going to help me tell the truth, find a way. She looked at him pleadingly. "I never meant for her to die for my secrets." Jack looked at the 3 little girls clinging to each other, one born of shame but raised in love, 2 adopted into a desperate plan that had become the truest kind of family. He thought of Mary, who had died protecting this truth, believing in love over blood. "Then we'll honor her," he said quietly, helping Sarah to her feet, "by keeping them safe. All of them." Sarah swayed against him, her armor finally cracking. "Jack, But Beth ran to them then, Emma and Annie right behind her. 3 pairs of arms wrapped around them both, holding them together as the moon sailed over Montana pines, and Sheriff Morgan's men disappeared into the night, chasing shadows of the past away from their future. Dawn found them in the cabin's main room, the girls finally asleep in a tangle of blankets by the hearth. Sarah sat in Mary's rocking chair, holding a letter Jack had never seen before, the last one Mary had written, found in the lining of Sarah's trunk where she'd kept it safe all these years. "I couldn't bear to read it," Sarah admitted, her voice rough from the night's events. The graze on her arm was bandaged now, but she held it carefully, knowing it arrived too late. Jack knelt beside the chair, his hand finding hers. Together they unfolded the paper, Mary's familiar script flowing across the page. "Dearest Sarah, by the time you read this, I pray I'll have seen you in person, held you close, and met the precious girls you've written about so faithfully. Beth, who reminds me so much of you in your letters, Emma and Annie, who've become her sisters in all the ways that matter. I know your fear, dear friend. I've seen Thomas's darkness growing in your words over the years, but I've also seen your light, the way you've turned shame into love, a mistake into a miracle. Beth may have Wheeler blood, but she has your heart. And that's worth everything. Jack and I have been talking about family, about love, about second chances. We've been blessed with land, with means, with space in our hearts. Let us help. Let us give the girls a real home, a fresh start. Let us be the family you all deserve. Come to Montana, not just to visit, but to stay. Jack doesn't know Beth's full story yet, but he will. And knowing him as I do, the man who taught me that love is a choice we make every day, I know he'll understand. With hope and love, Mary P.S. I have such wonderful news to share when you arrive. God's blessings come in the most unexpected ways. The letter blurred in Sarah's hands. Jack reached up, gently wiping tears from her cheeks. She was right about me, he said softly, about the choice. Lightning flickered outside and thunder rolled across the plains. The storm that had been threatening all night was finally breaking. Beth stirred at the sound, sitting up to check on her sisters before her eyes found Sarah. "Mama?" Her voice was small, uncertain. Are you still my mama?" Sarah opened her arms and Beth flew into them. "Always and forever, my practical girl. You and Emma and Annie. You're all my daughters in every way that matters. But Uncle Thomas said, your uncle lost his way a long time ago." Jack cut in, his voice gentle but firm. "Family isn't about blood. It's about love, about choice." He met Sarah's eyes over Beth's head. "About forgiveness. Like Mama forgave my real father?" Beth asked, showing that uncanny perception that reminded him so much of Mary. "You're real." "Father is right here," Sarah said, surprising them both. If he wants to be." Jack's heart stopped, then started again with a different rhythm. "You mean that?" "Mary knew what she was doing," Sarah whispered, "bringing us all together. She saw what was possible even then." Emma and Annie had woken too, drawn by the conversation. They climbed onto the chair, somehow finding space on Sarah's lap beside Beth. Outside, rain poured down, washing away the dust and blood of yesterday's confrontation. "Does this mean we can stay?" Emma asked hopefully. "Forever?" "Please," Annie added, clutching Hope the doll. Jack looked at them, 4 faces filled with love and trust and hope. Mary had seen this possibility years ago, had died protecting it, had perhaps even guided them all to this moment through her letters and her love and her unshakable faith in second chances. He reached for Sarah's hand again, feeling the way their fingers fit together. "Yes," he said simply, "forever." The storm raged outside, but in the cabin, the fire burned warm and bright. Mary's last letter lay between them, not an ending anymore, but a beginning, a blessing, a choice. Sarah leaned down, kissing Beth's forehead, then Emma's, then Annie's. "My 3 little stars," she whispered, an old nickname taking on new, meaning shining all the brighter for the darkness behind us. Jack wrapped his arms around all of them, holding his family close as the storm washed their world clean. Sheriff Morgan arrived as the storm was breaking, bringing news of Thomas's escape despite his wound. But even this shadow couldn't darken the morning that followed. Jack found the drawing while the girls were helping Sarah make breakfast, a sheet of paper that had slipped under the hearth during the night. The picture showed 6 figures in front of a house. A man in a cowboy hat, a woman with long dark hair, 3 little girls holding hands, and an angel floating above them all, her smile rendered in careful crayon strokes. Each figure was labeled, in Beth's precise handwriting, Papa Jack, Mama, me, Emma, Annie, and Aunt Mary watching over us. "Beth drew that yesterday," Emma announced, bringing plates to the table. Before everything got scary, Jack studied the drawing. Throat tight. Mary's figure had been given a golden halo, her arms spread wide over the family below, just like Beth to understand, to see not just what was, but what could be. "It's a good family portrait," he said, voice rough, "though we should add a few more faces." He glanced at Sarah. "Jim Morgan's been like an uncle to me since Mary died, and Mrs. Peterson already treats the girls like grandchildren." Sarah's hands stilled on the coffee pot. "You really want to put down roots, even with Thomas still out there." Especially because of that, Jack pinned the drawing to the wall where Mary's wanted posters used to hang. "Running lets him win. Let's fear win. These girls deserve better. We can't just pretend the dangers are gone," Sarah protested, but her eyes were fixed on the drawing, on the family Beth had seen so clearly. "No," Jack agreed, "but we can face it together. Jim's already started spreading the word. Thomas Wheeler's sister died in that attack last night. Her daughters, too." He met Sarah's startled gaze. As far as the world's concerned, Sarah Mitchell and her girls are gone. But Sarah Harrison and her daughters are very much alive. Annie dropped her fork with a clatter. We get to be Harrisons? If that's what you want, little lady. Jack kept his voice steady, though his heart was racing. All of you, but we'd need a proper wedding, Beth said practically, and papers for me and Emma and Annie, already handled. Sheriff Morgan's voice came from the doorway. He tipped his hat to Sarah, holding up an envelope. Marriage license, adoption papers, new birth certificates, all signed and sealed. Helps to have a judge owe you a favor. Sarah's hands trembled as she took the envelope. Jim, we can't ask you to... Mary was my friend too, the sheriff cut in gently. Known Jack since we were boys. Family takes care of family. He cleared his throat. Speaking of which, got men posted on every trail. Thomas won't get near these. Children again. He'll try, Sarah whispered. Let him. Jack's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. He'll find more than one gun waiting this time. Beth slipped off her chair, moving to stand between them. She took Jack's hand, then Sarah's, joining them together. Aunt Mary's watching, she said with perfect faith. She'll help keep us safe. Jack looked down at their linked hands, at the drawing on the wall, at the family gathered around his table. He remembered Mary's words from her last letter. Love is a choice we make every day. Well then, he said, squeezing Sarah's fingers. Gently. Seems we've got a wedding to plan. Emma bounced in her seat. Can I be flower girl? You all can. Sarah laughed, the sound lighter than Jack had ever heard it. My 3 little stars, lighting the way. And Hope can wear a dress too, Annie added, hugging her doll close. Sheriff Morgan chuckled. Might want to visit Mrs. Peterson. She's been saving some white lace, said she had a feeling it'd be needed soon. Jack caught Sarah's eye across their joined hands. What do you say, Sarah Mitchell? Ready to become a Harrison? Her smile was like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Sarah Harrison, she tested the name, mother of Beth, Emma, and Annie. Harrison. She touched the drawing with her free hand, fingers brushing the angel's golden halo. Mary knew, didn't she? Right from the start. She always did see clear to the heart of things, Jim agreed. Saw past blood to love. Outside, the morning sun painted the rain-washed world in new colors. The farm that had been silent for so long rang with children's laughter as the girls ran to tell Hope about their new name. Sarah leaned into Jack's side, fitting there as if Mary had carved out the space just for her, and on the wall, beneath Beth's drawing, Jack could almost imagine new words appearing in Mary's elegant script. Love makes a family. Choice makes it strong. Faith makes it whole. The wedding was set for sunset. Sarah stood at Mary's old vanity, pinning white roses in her hair when she heard it. The distinctive sound of a hammer being cocked. In the mirror's reflection, she saw Thomas standing in the doorway, his wounded shoulder held stiff, his eyes fever-bright with rage and determination. Touching, he sneered, gesturing at her simple white dress. Playing house with my dead victim's husband. Sarah turned, slowly, her hands steady. On the vanity lay Mary's father's gun belt, a wedding gift Jack had given her that morning. For protection, he'd said, showing her how the old lawman had sewn a hidden holster into the decorative leather. It's over, Thomas, she said quietly. Beth isn't yours to claim. None of them are. Blood is blood, sister dear. He limped forward, gun unwavering. Did you really think I'd let you steal my heir? Let you bury the Wheeler name under Harrison like it means nothing? The Wheeler name? Sarah's laugh held no humor. Our father was a drunk who beat our mother. Our grandfather was a thief who died in prison. The only good Wheeler I ever knew was our grandmother, and she changed her name back to Mitchell the day grandfather went to jail. Thomas's face twisted. Shut up and get the girl. We're leaving. No. Sarah's hand inched toward the gun belt. Beth is my daughter. Emma and Annie are my daughters. Love made us family, not blood. Love? Thomas spat the word. Love got Mary Harrison killed. Love made you hide my own blood from me. Love. The bedroom door creaked. Beth stood there in her flower girl dress, Mary's blue ribbon in her hair. Her eyes went wide at the gun. But she didn't run. "Beth," Thomas's voice turned wheedling, "come to Uncle Thomas. Don't you want to know about your real family?" "I know my real family," Beth said, her voice small but clear. "They're downstairs getting ready for the wedding. Mama and Papa Jack and my sisters." "Papa Jack?" Thomas's laugh was ugly. "He's nothing to you, just some fool playing father to... He's everything to me." Beth's chin lifted. "He teaches me about horses. He listens to my stories. He keeps us safe." Her eyes met Sarah's. "He loves us. That's what real fathers do." Sarah's fingers closed around the hidden gun. "Last chance, Thomas. Leave us be. Or what? You'll shoot your own brother, like you should have done 5 years ago before I put a bullet in your precious Mary." The confession hung in the air like gun smoke. Beth gasped, and in that moment of distraction, Thomas lunged for her. Sarah drew Mary's father's gun in one smooth motion, just as Jack had taught her. "Don't!" she warned, but Thomas was beyond reason. He grabbed Beth's arm, making her cry out in pain. The first shot took Thomas in his good shoulder, spinning him away from Beth. Sarah's hands didn't shake as she held the gun steady. "Beth, run to Papa Jack." But before Beth could move, Thomas recovered, raising his own gun with a roar of rage. 2 shots cracked almost simultaneously. Sarah felt heat graze her cheek as Thomas's bullet passed by. Her second shot hit center mass, just as Jack had shown her at the practice range. Thomas staggered, disbelief crossing his face. "Blood is..." he tried to say, but the words faded as he slumped to the floor. Boots thundered up the stairs. Jack burst in, rifle ready, Sheriff Morgan right behind him. They found Sarah holding, Beth shielding her daughter's eyes from the sight on the floor. The gun belt had slipped to hang askew, its hidden holster now empty. "Sarah," Jack's voice was gentle as he touched her shoulder, "you're bleeding." She reached up, felt the shallow cut on her cheek where Thomas's last bullet had passed. "Just a graze." "Beth?" "I'm okay, Mama." Beth's voice was muffled against her dress. "Did you... Is he..." "He's gone," Jim Morgan confirmed, checking Thomas's body. "Won't hurt anyone ever again." Jack gathered them both close, his arms strong and sure. "Emma and Annie, safe with Mrs. Peterson in the kitchen," Jim assured them. "Never knew anything. Was wrong." Sarah finally allowed herself to shake, letting the gun slip from her fingers. Jack caught it, restored it reverently to its holster. "Mary's father would be proud," he murmured. "He always said this gun belt was meant to protect family." Beth looked up then, her face tear-streaked but calm. Can we still have the wedding?" Sarah laughed through her tears, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Of course, my practical girl. Love doesn't wait for perfect moments." "No," Jack agreed, helping them both up. "It makes moments perfect." He touched the gun belt with gentle fingers, "even the hard ones." "Then let's go get married," Sarah said firmly. "Let's give our daughters their real name once and for all." As they left the room, Sarah glanced back once. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching the gun belt's worn leather. For a moment, she thought she saw Mary's reflection in the vanity mirror, smiling in approval. Protection and love, wrapped in one legacy. The last Wheeler had fallen, but the Harrisons, they were just beginning. Sheriff Morgan found the pocket watch in Thomas's vest. Mary's last gift to Jack, stolen the night of her murder. Its face was cracked now, the hands frozen at 4:17, marking the moment Thomas Wheeler's bullet had finally found him. Jim handed it to Jack as they stood in the yard, watching his deputies load Thomas's body into a wagon. "Fitting," Jim said quietly. "Time stopping for him just like he stopped it for Mary." Jack turned the watch over, finding Mary's inscription. Still legible. "To my love, may we have all the time in the world." His thumb traced the words as Sarah approached, her wedding dress exchanged for a simple blouse and skirt. The cut on her cheek had been cleaned and bandaged by Mrs. Peterson, who was now inside with the girls. "The watch," Sarah breathed, recognizing it. "Mary wrote me about choosing the inscription." Jack held it out to her. "It should have been your wedding gift to us today." Sarah took it carefully, then reached for the chain around her neck, removing a small key. Mary sent me this years ago. Said someday I'd know what it was for. Her hands trembled slightly as she fitted it into the watch's winding mechanism. The click was loud in the autumn air. The back panel swung open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a folded paper and a small daguerreotype. Mary holding an infant Beth, her smile radiant. "The missing week," Sarah whispered. "When I brought Beth to her, letting everyone think she was helping at a sick friend's house, she kept proof." All this time, Jack studied the image of his wife cradling the child who would become his daughter. She knew someday we'd need to understand, to remember. "Jack, Sarah," Emma's voice carried from the porch. "Reverend Barnes says he can still do the wedding if you want. He says love matters more than timing." They turned to see all three girls. In their flower-strewn dresses, Hope the doll wearing a handkerchief veil, Beth held her sister's hands, anchoring them as always. Their faces were solemn but hopeful, too young to fully understand the day's darkness, but old enough to know love when they saw it. "What do you say?" Jack asked softly. "Ready to make it official?" Sarah looked at the watch in her hands. Time stopped for Thomas, but flowing on for them. She tucked the daguerreotype and paper carefully away, then handed the watch back to Jack. "Wind it," she said. "Let's start our time together." Jack's fingers were sure on the key. The watch's mechanisms creaked, then began to tick, counting. Forward instead of standing still. Together, they walked back to their family waiting on the porch. The ceremony was simple, witnessed by those who had stood with them through everything. Sheriff Morgan gave the bride away. Mrs. Peterson sniffled happily in the front row. The girls scattered late-blooming wildflowers, their happiness uncomplicated by the morning's shadows. When the Reverend asked for the rings, Beth stepped forward, with Mary's wedding band, found in Thomas's pocket along with the watch. Jack's hands shook as he placed it on Sarah's finger, but his voice was steady. "With this ring, I thee wed. Not just you, but our daughters too. All of our daughters." Sarah's answering smile was like sunrise after the longest night. The simple gold band Jack had bought her gleamed as she slipped it on his finger. "With this ring, I thee wed. You and the family we choose. The family Mary helped build. By the power vested in me," Reverend Barnes intoned, "I now pronounce you man and wife. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." As Jack kissed his bride, the broken watch ticked steadily in his pocket, counting the first moments of their new life. Emma and Annie threw the last of their flowers, while Beth held Hope up to see properly. Mrs. Peterson dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, and Sheriff Morgan cleared his throat suspiciously often. And somewhere they all knew Mary was smiling, her love for them woven into the very fabric of their family, stronger than blood, stronger than bullets, stronger than time itself. Later, they found Beth's newest drawing tucked into the watch's compartment alongside Mary's photograph. It showed the same family as before, but now the angel wore Mary's gentle smile, her hands spread in blessing over the name written in a child's careful script. The Harrison family. Time, stopped for so long in grief, had finally begun to flow forward into joy. The traveling photographer hadn't planned to stop at the Harrison ranch, but when his wagon broke down during the first autumn rain, he found himself welcomed into a home that seemed to be waiting for just such a moment. "It's a sign," Annie declared, clutching Hope as she watched the man set up his camera in the main room. Aunt Mary arranged it. Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair, sharing a smile with Jack over the child's certainty. The past week since their wedding had brought other signs of Mary's continuing care. Her favorite roses blooming weeks past their season, her music box playing unexpectedly during Beth's nightmares, her recipes falling open to exactly the pages Sarah needed. "Stand still now," the photographer instructed, ducking under his black cloth. "This solution takes time to set." They arranged themselves carefully, Jack and Sarah seated, the girls standing between them. Beth wore Mary's blue ribbon. Emma had insisted on holding Hope alongside Annie, and all three girls wore the dresses Mrs. Peterson had helped them sew from Mary's saved fabric. "Someone's missing," Beth said suddenly, just as the photographer was ready. She ran to the mantel and returned with Mary's framed portrait, placing it on the small table beside them. "There, now we're all here." The photographer raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He'd seen odder things in his travels than a family choosing to include a departed loved one. "The process will take several minutes," he warned. "Try not to move." As they held their poses, Sarah felt Jack's hand find hers. So much had changed since that stormy night when she'd arrived with 3 frightened girls and a heart full of secrets. Thomas was buried now, his final confession recorded by Sheriff Morgan, clearing Jack of any suspicion in the shooting. The Wheeler gang had scattered to the winds, leaving only scattered whispers that transformed with each telling. Ghost stories to warn children rather than real threats. But the greatest changes were the subtle ones. The way Emma no longer hid maps in her dolls. The way Beth had started signing her schoolwork as Beth Harrison without hesitation. The way Annie sang Mary's songs as if she'd known them all her life. "Almost done," the photographer called. "Just a moment more." Sarah studied her family's reflection in the camera's glass plate. Jack's quiet strength, the girls' bright faces, her own hard-won peace. And there, watching over them all, Mary's portrait seemed to glow with approval. A sudden shaft of sunlight broke through the rain clouds, illuminating them all in golden light. The photographer exclaimed in delight at the effect as he captured the final exposure. "Perfect timing, though I've never seen quite that quality of light before." "We have," Jack said softly, and Sarah squeezed his hand. When the photograph was developed, it showed something remarkable, whether a trick of the light or something more mysterious. A soft halo seemed to surround them all, as if Mary's love had made itself visible in that frozen moment. The photographer offered to take another, calling it a technical fault. But Sarah knew better. This was Mary's final gift. Proof that love transcended death, that family transcended blood, that healing could follow even the deepest wounds. They hung the photograph in place of Thomas's wanted poster directly across from Beth's crayon drawing of their family. Between the 2 images, one born of a child's hope, one captured by Mary's borrowed light, their story was told in full. That evening, as rain painted the windows with silver, they gathered for their nightly ritual. The girls took turns winding Mary's music box, while Jack and Sarah shared stories of the aunt who had loved them before she knew them. "Tell about the roses again," Annie begged, snuggled between her sisters on the hearth rug. "How Aunt Mary knew they were Mama's favorite. And about the secret code in her letters," Emma added. No longer keeping secrets of her own, she had become fascinated by the way Mary and Sarah had woven love into their correspondence. "And about the schoolhouse," Beth finished quietly, "where she taught you both to be brave." Sarah leaned into Jack's embrace as he began the familiar tales. Outside, the rain fell like a blessing, washing away the last shadows of summer's grief. Their family portrait watched over them, Mary's light forever caught in silver nitrate and love, while new memories wrote themselves into the story she had helped begin. The music box played on, its melody carrying all their voices forward into tomorrow. Judge Carlton's arrival coincided with the first snowfall of winter. He brought with him a leather portfolio filled with papers that would make official what their hearts had known for months. Sarah stood at the window, watching Jack teach the girls how to make snow angels, when the judge cleared his throat. "Mrs. Harrison," he spread the documents across Mary's old desk. "We're ready to begin." The marriage certificate came first, already filed with the territory office. Sarah touched her name, written beside Jack's in formal script, remembering the moment. She'd signed it. Now it anchored a constellation of legal papers. Adoption documents for Emma and Annie, papers officially changing Beth's surname to Harrison, property rights that made all 3 girls heirs to the ranch. Quite a bit of paperwork to make a family, the judge commented, arranging his inkwell and pen. "No," Sarah said softly, "the family was already made. This just protects it." Through the window, she watched Jack demonstrate the proper technique for a snow angel. his arms and legs sweeping through pristine white. Beth copied him precisely, while Emma added her own flourishes. Annie seemed more interested in catching. Snowflakes on her tongue, Hope the doll wrapped safely in Mary's old scarf. Mary would have loved this, Judge Carlton said, following her gaze. She always said the law should serve love, not hinder it. He smiled at Sarah's surprised look. She was my clerk for a summer, before she married Jack. Taught me a thing or two about justice versus law. One by one, Sarah signed the papers. Each signature felt like a promise, a shield, a blessing. When she reached the final document, Beth's legal name changed. Her hand trembled slightly. Having doubts? The judge asked kindly. No, Sarah's voice was firm, just grateful. There were so many ways this could have ended differently. The judge nodded toward the window. Mary had a hand in this ending, I'd say. She always did. Like fixing things, he began stamping the documents with his official seal. Speaking of fixing, that music box of hers, the one that kept skipping that one note, started playing perfect after you all moved in. Jack mentioned it last time I was here. Sarah's breath caught. Outside, Jack had gathered all three girls into a group hug, their laughter carrying through the glass. The snow fell around them like confetti, blessing a celebration 5 years in the making. There now, Judge Carlton said, binding the completed documents into a ribbon-tied packet. The Harrison family, official in every court in the territory. He hesitated, then added, Mary kept a journal during that summer she worked for me. Left it in my care, said I'd know when it was needed. Would you like to see it? He withdrew, a small leather book from his coat. Sarah opened it with trembling fingers, finding Mary's familiar handwriting. Today, I learned about adoption law, about how love can be made legal, how families can be chosen as well as born. I think about Sarah, about the choice she faced, about the strength it took to protect her daughter. Someday, when the time is right, the law will help love win. I'm making sure of it. The entry was dated just months before her death. Sarah closed the journal gently, understanding now why Mary had studied so diligently with the judge. She'd been laying groundwork, preparing a way even then. Keep it, Judge Carlton said. It belongs with the family she helped build. A squeal of delight drew their attention back to the window. Jack had shown the girls how to make snowballs, though his lesson on proper throwing technique was quickly devolving into a free-for-all. Beth's practical nature was evidenced by her carefully stockpiled ammunition, while Emma's wild spirit showed in her dramatic dodging. Annie seemed content to act as Jack's ammunition maker, patting snow into wobbly spheres. "Mama!" Emma called, spotting her at the window. "Come play! Papa Jack's teaching us winter warfare." "Winter warfare?" Sarah laughed. "Sounds serious." "Very serious," Jack agreed solemnly, then took a snowball directly to the chest from Beth's expert throw. He clutched his heart dramatically, falling backward into a snowdrift. "I'm hit. Save yourselves." The judge chuckled, gathering his things. "I'd say these papers just make official what's already real as that snow out there." He patted the packet of documents. "Congratulations, Mrs. Harrison. Your family's all legal now." Sarah watched him ride away, then pulled on Mary's old winter coat, found hanging in the back of their closet, perfectly preserved. She stepped out into the swirling snow, into the laughter and love that Mary had helped orchestrate from beyond death's veil. "Look, Mama," Annie pointed to their snow angels. "We made one for Aunt Mary too." And there it was, a perfect angel. Shape, untouched by their play, its wings spread wide in eternal embrace. Christmas morning dawned clear and bright, the ranch wrapped in pristine snow. Sarah woke to the familiar sound of Mary's music box playing in the girls' room, their traditional way of starting special days. But today, another melody joined it, one she didn't recognize. She found Jack in his workshop, putting the finishing touches on a polished maple box. His father's old carpentry tools lay scattered around him, and wood shavings dusted his hair like snow. When he saw her, he carefully lifted the lid, revealing delicate gears and a brass cylinder studded with tiny pins. "It's not quite Mary's," he said softly, "but I thought we could start our own tradition alongside hers." The new music box played Home on the Range, the full version, with Mary's father's extra verses. But Jack had added something, a harmony, line that wove through the melody like a second voice joining the first. "Papa Jack!" Annie's delighted cry came from the doorway. All three girls stood there in their nightgowns, Mary's music box cradled in Beth's careful hands. "You made a sister for Aunt Mary's box." "Sure did, little lady." Jack's voice was rough, with emotion. "Think we could use both for our Christmas song?" They gathered around as Jack synchronized the two boxes. Mary's played Beautiful Dreamer, while his new creation harmonized with Home on the Range, the two melodies dancing together like old friends sharing a secret. "It's perfect," Sarah whispered, thinking of all the ways their family had learned to blend old memories with new joy. The girls insisted on carrying both music boxes to the main room where the small Christmas tree waited. Its decorations told their story. Mary's handed-down ornaments nestled beside new ones the girls had made, including a carefully painted angel that bore a striking resemblance to their aunt. "Presents first or carols?" Jack asked, though they all knew the answer. Every special occasion began and ended with music now. Beth wound Mary's music box, while Emma and Annie took turns with the new one. Together, they sang all the verses of both songs, their voices rising and falling with the tinkling melodies. Sarah's harmony and Jack's bass filled out the sound until the cabin seemed too small to hold all their joy. "Time for presents," Emma announced when the last note faded. "And I know which one to open first." She darted to the tree, returning with a package wrapped in brown paper and tied with Mary's blue ribbon. The tag read, "To Mama and Papa Jack from your three little stars." Inside lay a book, its cover crafted from the same leather as Mary's old Bible. Beth had carefully copied all their important papers inside: the marriage certificate, adoption documents, Mary's last letter, even Judge Carlton's journal entries. Emma had illustrated each page with drawings of their family, while Annie had pressed flowers between the pages, just as Mary used to do. "Mrs. Peterson helped us bind it," Beth explained practically, "and Sheriff Morgan found the leather. We put in blank pages too," Emma added, "for more memories. And look," Annie said, opening to the last page, where a small compartment had been built into the cover, "for special things, like Aunt Mary's watch." Sarah touched the book gently, recognizing it for what it was: a bridge between past and future, a repository for all the love that had brought them to this moment. Jack cleared his throat several times before speaking. This is something special, girls." "We know," Beth said simply, "like us." They spent the morning adding to their book. A sketch of the two music boxes playing together, pressed holly from their Christmas tree, a family portrait drawn by Emma showing snowflakes falling on happy faces. The old melodies played on, weaving past and present together, while outside the winter sun painted the snow in rainbow colors. "Aunt Mary would love the new music box," Annie declared with her usual certainty. "She always said music was love, made into sound." Sarah caught Jack's eye over their daughters' heads. Yes, Mary would have loved this, not because it replaced her memory, but because it honored it. Like the harmonizing music boxes, their family had learned to play old songs and new ones together, creating something richer than either could be alone. Love, like music, only grew stronger when you shared it. Spring came early to the Montana Territory that year. On the first warm morning, Jack gathered his family in the ranch yard to show them something he'd been working on all winter. The new brand iron gleamed in the sunlight, its design combining elements of both their histories. The Harrison H intertwined with a 5-pointed star, 1 point for each family member, plus 1 for Mary. "Time to mark the spring calves," he explained, "and I thought we should do it proper as a family." Sarah touched the brand gently. A year had passed since that stormy night when she'd arrived with 3 frightened girls and a heart full of secrets. Now she stood in the same yard as Sarah Harrison, watching her daughters bloom like Mary's roses. Beth, practical as ever, studied the brand's design. "The star points all connect to the H," she observed. "Like we're all connected to each other. And to Aunt Mary," Annie added, Hope the doll tucked securely under her arm. The doll wore a new dress, made from scraps of Mary's old ones, the name tag now properly spelled with all 5 letters. Emma, still the adventurous one, was already leading her favorite colt from the barn. "Can we help with the branding, Papa Jack? I've been practicing my rope work." They spent the morning working together, each finding their place in the rhythm of ranch life. Beth kept careful count in Mary's old ledger, while Emma helped guide the calves into position. Annie sang to keep the young animals calm, her clear voice carrying Mary's favorite songs across the pasture. When the work was done, they gathered on the porch steps, the same steps where Sarah had once faced down her brother to protect her children. Now those steps held happier memories. Story times, singing sessions, quiet moments watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. "Look!" Annie pointed to a shaft of sunlight breaking through the clouds. "Aunt Mary's saying we did a good job." Sarah leaned against Jack's shoulder, watching their daughters head off to the barn for evening chores. The new brand had left its mark on more than just cattle. It had marked them all as belonging, truly and finally, to each other. "Mary would be proud," Jack said softly, "of all of us." "She is," Sarah replied with certainty. "She's been with us every step of the way." As if in answer, both music boxes began to play from inside the house, the old one and the new, their melodies twining together in perfect harmony. 5 points of a star, bound together by love, stronger than blood, stronger than grief, stronger than time itself. The Harrison brand glowed in the sunset light, promising generations of stories yet to come. And somewhere, they all knew, Mary was smiling.